over Nigeria for 9 years and ran Africa's largest country and dealt with a civil war at the same time. Before we get to those interesting times, how did you become, what was the path to becoming Africa's youngest president and head of state? How did it all begin?
Well, Bob, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about a little bit of my past. And it's interesting, that by this stage, I'm a soldier, just a simple, loyal soldier, a political soldier. And as far as I'm concerned, I never had any ambition whatsoever to lead a nation, and certainly I have not been trained, to govern. Yes, trained to be loyal to the government of the day, to take orders from my political masters. That was the way we were brought up, and that was the way it was. Until 1966, January 1966, on the 15th of January 1966, all of a sudden, without any expectation, there was a coup in Nigeria. Now, prior to that, I think it may be interesting to know, I was on my way back from a Joint Services Staff College in Britain, and on my way back on board the ship, I don't know why. I think when a lot of people knew that I was a soldier, they kept on asking me, "Do you think that a coup could take place in Nigeria?" And I said, "A coup? Impossible. It is not going to happen. It cannot be. We are an apolitical army, and relationship between us and between senior and junior officers is on such good terms that such a thing could not happen." And they kept on asking me this, British, Nigerian, and Ghanaian, Sierra Leone, all those on board the ship. And I kept on saying, no, it is impossible. But as it happened, just before we got to Ghana, before we got to Nigeria, during the 13 days trip, there were 3 coups in Central and West Africa, 3 coups. And one of them, I remembered, I said, goodness gracious me, it was in West Africa, either Togo or Dahomey at that time, Benin now. And I said, goodness gracious me, it is getting too close home for comfort. And so when they asked me that question again, I decided that, look, let me be a philosopher. Nothing is impossible in this world. But I hope if such a thing happens in Nigeria, a few loyal ones of us will deal with the situation and return the status quo.
Okay, let's keep you on the journey. Let's keep you off Tema or Accra. But let's go back a bit. You were born in the Middle Belt.
Yes, I was born in a little village or town called Garam in the plateau, in the plateau. But I was brought up in Zaria, some 200 miles from my route, from my ancestral home. And that was where I grew up. Went to a mission school there.
A Christian mission school.
Yeah, a Christian mission school, the St. Bartholomew's Wusasa School, and that was where most of my upbringing came about. And this is in the Hausa, the heart of the Hausa land. And so that was where I was born. But I grew up in Zaria, went to school at Wusasa, and then that is my junior, what we call junior or primary school, and middle school in Wusasa, and then moved a few miles away after sitting my entrance examination to the secondary school, a government secondary school in Zaria, at that time called the Government Secondary School Zaria. That was where I went. I had my secondary school. and then decided to join the army.
Okay, why did you decide to join the Army?
Well, interestingly enough, it was not the army I wanted to. I wanted for a career. It was the teaching. It was teaching. I wanted to go to probably teacher training college or university, and then teacher training college, and then to be able to teach so that I can be able to go back and teach in the mission school that was able to give me,
Right.
a free education and a sign of gratitude. But then, at school I was a natural leader, a sports captain, boxing captain, athletics captain, football 11, and even my school headmaster or principal wanted me. They all wanted me to join the army, but I said no. It is it is teaching that I wanted to, until on the very last day when a number of my classmates were going for the interview for the army, and practically about 11 or 12 of them. And I said, well, look, if all my friends are going there, why should I not? So I went to the principal and said, well, I think I would like to go to the army too. And he was excited that I went.
This is 1958?
No, this was 1953.
53.
53, our last year and last time at school. And so he just wrote, he was so delighted, and he wrote a note to the commanding officer or the adjutant who was going to screen us, and to recommend that certainly I should be given a chance. And to cut a long story short, they have already left an hour or two ahead, and there was no transport for me to take me to the depot. And so the principal said, well, you're a good sportsman in any case. Since I was good at cross country, you can catch up with your colleagues. And so that was what I did. I ran and I called them up and went to for the interview. But to cut a long story short, of all those that went, I was the last of them, but I was the only one that in the end went into that got selected and went into the army.
Which meant straight into school, into an army school? Or?
No, you had to, after the secondary school, we had to return for roughly 3 months in order to prepare for the army entrance examination. And that was done, and when the result of your school certificate also arrived, and that was also all right. Then, of course, if you pass through the initial screening, as I've done, at the depot, then you have a chance of scaling through. And I went to the interview, and I got through, and so I joined the army on the 24th of May, 1954.
But you,
24th of May,
you
1954.
were then 16.
No, I think I would be about 1920.
1920?
Yes, I was born 1934. Yes,
Okay.
1934. So yes, 20. So I was roughly 20.
Okay.
Yes.
And then.
And then from there, after the passing the interview, was sent for training at Teshi. That's the West Africa Command Training Center at Teshi in Ghana.
I see.
Near
Okay,
Accra,
Ghana.
in Ghana. And after we've passed, that one, then we were sent to the UK for initial training. But you had to pass a number of the cadet training institutions or selection board.
Right.
So we had to pass the War Office selection board, and then you attended months of cadet school, and or Eton Hall during our time.
Right.
It was Eton Hall,
Right.
and then from there you do the regular officer
British officer.
the
corps.
officer commission board, and if you pass through that, then you go through Sandhurst, and then you are commissioned. So 54 I was in Accra. Then 55 January in the UK for Eaton Hall, and then Sandhurst, and went to Sandhurst in May 1955, and then was commissioned because in 1956, end of 1956. And because of the, if you remember, the Suez, the Suez Canal War,
Right.
and we were nearly drafted into that war, and we were very delighted that we were going to get, experience
Yeah.
and seeking the bubble reputation even from the cannon's mouth. And but however, we did not do that, and went for after the in 1956, went for it went for 57, went for the young officers training, and when I finished, then returned to Nigeria in 1957 by July 1957, and. So that was, the initial training, and of course attached to a unit, 4th Battalion of the Nigerian Army, and that was where probably I started to make my mark, as a young officer. And
This is Lagos, or
this was in Ibadan.
In Ibadan.
Some 100 kilometers or 100
yeah.
miles north of Lagos.
terrible road.
Yes.
And let's go back to Accra. You're on the ship. You're now a colonel, or coming back from.
Coming back,
this
was
in
1966.
Right.
I had attended this course at the Joint Services Staff College at Latimer, which was a senior course for senior advanced officers, where you study strategy and tactics, etc.
Right.
And of course, whereby all you learn about each of the three services. And this in the end turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because during the Civil War, I think that experience, that training, certainly came to use, and I was able to apply some of what I learned in getting all the three services of the Nigerian armed forces engaged in fighting our civil war. But in Accra, when we got to Accra, and there was this coup next door, and I said it was getting too close home for comfort. But I hope if such a thing happens, the few loyal ones of us will deal with the situation. And we got into Lagos the following day, and we could not get out of the boat on time, because I think there was a problem in getting the ship onto the inner quay. And so late in the evening, we were able to come out of the boat, and I went to go and pay my respect to my new brigade commander, because I'm being posted to his brigade, 2nd Brigade in Lagos, and he briefed me about what was happening, and told me that I'm going to command the very sensitive unit in Ikeja. That is the unit that gave protection and defense to Lagos. Now, as far as I'm concerned, well, that's a new appointment. And I said, what of holiday, what of leave, disembarkation leave? I said, no disembarkation leave. I'm afraid not for you, because the situation is quite serious. I think there are certain reports of some underground swell, of disaffection, and probably there is no time for you to have your leave. So I accepted, and I went to see the Adjutant General, and who took over from me as Adjutant General at the headquarters, and he briefed me about the situation and told me that yes, my posting has now been made to 2nd Division, 2nd Brigade, as the battalion commander in Ikeja, and that I'm expected to go there straight away. And so I went. Now, I did not realize, because I've just returned, I did not know what was happening, what was brewing at home. The only inkling of some crisis was when I was opportune to meet one of the senior officers who was attending the Imperial Defence College course in London, and we met him in the company of our former General Officer commanding the Nigerian Army, a British general. And he was giving us the background of a threat or a security report or threat, of probably a coup, but however it is being handled now. So that was probably the only.
And you were a general at this point?
No. I was a lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant colonel.
I was a lieutenant colonel. And so, so when I sailed, there was that one at the back of my mind. But as I've said, I never thought that there would be a coup in Nigeria. And then when we got, to Lagos, of course, 48 hours, less than 48 hours, in fact, 36 hours after I arrived, there was a coup. And practically all my colleagues, especially from the northern part of the country, who were senior to me, there are about 4 of them who were senior to me, all of them were eliminated in that, that early morning coup. I was the only one senior enough, to have survived, and and of course, as a result of that, although I was supposed to be commanding the battalion, I remembered I had to leave the battalion in the hand of my predecessor, who was to have traveled up north to another unit, posted to another unit. But somehow he came back. I don't know why he came back. And so I was only interested in going, to see if I can foil that coup and to find out what has happened to a lot of these senior officers and also the prime minister, of the country at the time. And so I drove, I made, when the general officer commanding the Nigerian Army, who had come to the unit at that time to arouse the troops, when I saw him, he briefed me on what has happened, and and that it is certainly a rebellion by some officers and men. And so they were trying to send troops into Lagos, and so they were asking for a number of. They were asking how long would they require, to get into Lagos. So they said roughly about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So I asked a question: when did we hear about this particular problem? And I was given that time, about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. What is the time now? And yes, the time now is about 6:30. And I said, and you want to give them another 2.5 hours to consolidate? I said, no, that is not on. If that's the case, please get a unit ready for me in half an hour, and I'm going to lead the troops into Lagos. And that was what happened. Within half an hour, I borrowed part of my uniform because I just arrived and I was only in mufti. And so I borrowed, the trousers, the boots, and that was I was kitted there and then. And then I took the unit into Lagos, and that was how, in fact, we were able to really checkmate those who were those who were already.
This is Iransi and his people, or
no, Iransi was the one who came to Ikeja to alert the troops. And he bulldozed his way through the roadblock, which some of these rebellious troops, had set up on the only main bridge into Lagos at that time, the Carter Bridge. And yes, that's right. And then it came to Ikeja and alerted the troops, and then I led the troops into Lagos and really dealt with the major force
This is
within Lagos Island, the Victoria Island, and Ikoyi.
so, and this is about the 20th of January.
No, this was the 15th of January.
15th of January.
15th of January, early morning
Okay.
of the 15th
And
of
so,
January.
and you became head of
Then
state.
Now, after that, of course, when we were able to foil the attempt of a coup in Lagos,
Right.
we had to, we had to contain the section of the troops that are up in the north, and they were more successful. But we had to make sure that we were able to get them to give up what their coup, and to surrender and join the loyal federal troops. Now, meanwhile, General Iransi was in Ikeja until when we got things under control in Lagos. Then asked him to come down so that he can take charge, since he is the GOC. And when he came, he met with the acting vice president, acting president, because the president was away on leave in the Caribbean, and he then later on met with the acting president and also the rump of the parliament. And when he came back, he said the acting president and the rump of parliament had decided to hand over the control of the government to him until such time that he's restored law and order and discipline. Then probably they can then resume politics. Now, I had no way of checking because I was more concerned about security.
Right.
And so I asked those who went with him 3 times, is that correct? They said yes. They said, is that correct? And they said yes. So at that stage, all that I said was that, well, sir, you have my double loyalty as my former, as my GOC, now as my new head of state. And with that one, of course, then General Iransi became the head of state. Now, then he started to set up a government. I was part of that government because became the chief of staff of the Nigerian army at that stage, since I was the only one who was able to control the army. And so I became a member of the Supreme Military Council, so a member of the government, by virtue of my position or post as the chief of staff of the Nigerian army. And so that government continued, but it was a very tenuous situation. And it was very difficult when the troops, officers, and some of the officers and men knew what has happened. The feeling of rebellion was even stronger. But for the luck that I had as a former adjutant general in charge of discipline, morale, etc., I was able to at least maintain that control on all the officers and men until such time that we were able to find out the source or the cause of what had happened, so that we can deal with it properly. So meanwhile, we were really on a borrowed time, and there were all other attempts, of coup by some of the junior officers, especially from the northern part of the country, who were not satisfied with what has happened, and they were only patient because I was there. I was, from the northern part of the country at the time, and so they could listen to me. And in the end, however, because of the uncertainty of the situation in the country at that time, there was another coup. General Iransi was going to speak to the traditional chiefs in Ibadan, and there were rumors of coup and counter coups, and a unit in Abeokuta, which is halfway between Ibadan and Lagos, they were trying to some of the southern officers, especially Igbo officers, because of the rumors that they've heard. They were trying to disarm some of the northern troops. And when some of them realized what was happening, they certainly reacted very quickly and refused to be disarmed. And they started, they started an uprising within that unit, where a number of some of the Igbo officers or southern officers were killed. And before you can know what is happening, the Ibadan had been contacted by this particular unit, and by the, Lagos was informed. So by the time I got to know it, I was chief of staff at that time. Now, all that I had to do was to make sure that I take over control before things got out of hand. Now, that was the saving grace. Now, yes, you may probably say, was it my coup? No, I was forced to take it over. Otherwise, if you do not know what could have happened. Meanwhile, already reaction in Ibadan. The general was arrested with his host, the governor Fajui in Ibadan, and unfortunately, before anyone could do anything. Now, when I was told that this is what has happened, I requested that they should not be harmed. And as far as I was concerned, I was going to give orders for them to be moved away from Ibadan to somewhere safe, and to set time that the situation is sorted out, which meant a new government put in place. But before anyone could do anything, unfortunately, they were killed. So that was this was in January 1966.
Still
Sorry, this was in July July 29th, I think, July 29th, 1966.
So you'd been 6 months as chief of staff.
Yes, I was roughly 6 months, 7 months.
And then you became head of state.
And then I became head of state.
And what were your immediate thoughts about how your leadership training up to that point had prepared you to become head of state?
To be very honest with you, I think that was at the time that I knew what real fear is. And I had when it became abundantly clear, there is no doubt about it, I was the most senior. And this
is at 31.
Yes, that's right. I was 31, going 32. Now, yes, and they've all said that, yes, it was me that they want to give the leadership. I didn't want it. I had offered it to other people who are even junior to me, Colonel Hassan and Murtala, and all that I wanted was to be left to look after the army so that I can restore the army back to what it should be, the loyalty, the discipline, the training, because I said without it, no government will be able to survive. And so that was my interest. But however, all the officers said, no, it is me that they wanted to give leadership. So when it became abundantly clear that I have got no way out of it, that was when the real fear came into me. Now, honestly, the way I felt, the dryness in my mouth, the butterfly the feeling like when you're going in for your first major examination, like the first school certificate, the sort of butterfly dryness, until such time that you probably you saw a question that you can answer well, and then you are able to start writing off, and then you get the adrenaline coming back, and you are able to scale through it. But that was the way I felt, and I felt inadequate. I felt fear. So this is it is now going to be my responsibility. What training have I got? No, I have not had any training for government. I have not had the opportunity to go to a school of government like the Kennedy School of Government to
quite right, yes.
to be brushed up on how to govern. And but one good thing that I know I had was the good training that I've had. I've had very good training at Teshi and at Sandhurst. I've had a very good young officers training, but Staff College Camberley, that was, although professional, they taught you, how to be able to be responsible, to be able to face any problem there is, in life.
Well, what is someone thrust into unexpected leadership at nearly 32, only 32?
Yeah.
What reservoirs of leadership does one draw upon? How did you begin to organize your government?
Yes. Well,
since it was a government
yes.
developed from a fractured nation,
that's
a
very
broken
true.
nation at that point.
Well, as I've said, these two training
Scott's
that I've had, these two training courses that I had, the Staff College Camberley and the Joint Services Staff College in Latimer, I think there they taught you to be able to appreciate any situation and to be able to face any problem, whether you know anything about it or not. Now, that was part of that training. And those lessons that were taught us at those institutions really became very, very useful, weighty, and very useful. Now, when I accepted that, that yes, now if I'm I'm the one that the final responsibility for the nation rests with. The buck ended at my desk. Of course, I had to consult. I had to decide what needed to be done. Now, I had a very good civil service. Exceptionally experienced civil service, taught or brought up by the British. And as far as I'm concerned, I respected them. A lot of them, for example, some of them were my permanent secretary only the other day. Only the other day. Now I'm their political boss, and they accepted it as such. And I said, all right, now this is the problem that we have. How are we going to deal with it now? There were no ministers. Of course, you cannot appoint any ministers. So what did we do? I had to rely on the bulk of my civil servants, who at least know the form of government, how things were being done. They are the account holders in their respective ministries. And therefore, they know what sort of fund they have in their respective ministries. And so we're able to draw from what they know. Now, what is on the ground, in every department, whether it is defense, whether it is in health, whether it is internal affairs, what are the problems, what needed to be done. The important thing is, first and foremost, to restore law and order and confidence that there is now a government in the country, and how do we do it? Then, of course, we meet together, as a team. and to sort of say what is it that is required to be done. And we looked at what needed to be done, and instruction is given. The Secretary to the Government takes the minutes, and then things are carried out by the ministries. So all my permanent secretaries, all the permanent secretaries in all the departments, including the, of course, Secretary to the Government, whom I had then appointed, we meet practically every day to look at to discuss problems that there are in the various ministries and therefore in the various countries, and then we carried on with what needed to be done. Meanwhile, I have appointed governors.
Right.
I have appointed governors.
But what gave you, as a young person, the ability to appoint other governors, to lead, and to be sure that you were doing the right thing? There must have been something inside of you which gave you the strength of character to do that so many of your military successors never had.
Well, as I've said, one had read a lot of books, history books. You've read about government, about how things are done in other countries. As a student of history, yes, you learn some of these things, and since you have the basic education, you also discuss some of this issue. Now, that was my approach. I accepted that I do not know the answers to a lot of these issues, and therefore there is need for us to put our heads together and see how what needed to be done. And so it is a question of pooling various resources and experiences and advice from all those who are there in order to get things done. Now, there were governors, because when, in fact, when the Iransi took over government, they've set up a form of government. We have the Supreme Military Council, which is the highest ruling body in the country, and then you have the Federal Executive Council. The Federal Executive Council is the one that deals with the day-to-day problems of governance at the federal level. The Supreme Military Council deals with the problem that affects the whole country, especially each of the states. And so they come for a meeting, and we discuss what needs to be done, and then the decisions are taken and instructions are given, and these governors take the instructions and get on with it.
Yeah, I think you're being too modest, but in your 9 years are regarded as the best 9 years Nigeria has ever had, right up to the present. Your 9 years are the ones that are regarded as the best led, the fairest, the most democratic, even though they were led by a military leader, and the least corrupt. Now, so the question here is, what did you learn year by year which created such an effective leadership? What did you learn from year 2 that you didn't know in year 1? And in terms of leading, and you've said that you were inclusive, you've said that you were consensual, you embraced the civil service, which your successors never did, particularly the later ones, and you were conscious of the entire country rather than an ethnic group.
That's right.
But in addition to that, what was driving you as a leader?
Now, I think the first and most important thing is that by my training and by conviction, I love my country and I believe in my country. And I believe that if I mean, as I've said, because I'm a student of history, one reads about good and bad in a government. And that love and commitment to the country, I wanted to make sure that whatever is done in the interest and for the good of the country and the people. And for that, we focus on that nation must remain one and intact. Once that is done, we've got to give a good government, and a good government is a government that is able to provide for the need, think and provide for the need and the desire of the people, and to ensure their well-being, and also to ensure that there is peace and there is security. Now, that was, I think, the motivation, the motivation, and we had to achieve that. And one, of course, achieved that by making sure that every other person, whether you're a governor in the state or you're a permanent secretary in the federal, or when later on we wanted to bring in civilians into the government, because we said the military should try to finish what they've come to do, and to restore in a government, a normal democratic government, as quickly as possible. Therefore, we brought in the politicians, civilians into the running of the government, appointing them as ministers. So instead of having the ministries controlled by permanent secretaries and only soldiers, the bulk of the ministers were, a civilian, and I got them from all the political parties, from all ideology, that there were in the country at the time.
Well, what was the basis of choosing one over another?
No, well, I just, looked at the, I considered the particular person, irrespective of his religion, irrespective of his politics, irrespective of his ideology. I want you to come and help so that we can put our heads together and help move this country forward. So as a result of that, I decided to bring in leaders of most of the political parties. Like, for example, I brought in Chief Awolowo. I released him from prison, and then asked him to come and help us, in the government as a member of the Federal Executive Council. We had Aminu Kano, who is also a leader of another political party, right. J.S. Tarka, leader of another party, Chief Enahoro, and Shagari, and all these people. So it was cross-section. And we had some technocrats such as Dr. Dikko, who was a civil servant, medical doctor in charge of, was permanent secretary in the Northern Civil Service, made him a minister for health. So that was how we drew. So we drew people of different shades of opinion and politics. And as far as I'm concerned, I said, it is not the politics that matters. It is the idea, good idea that you have for the good of the country. That is the most important. And I believe that if at that time, the ideology is either you're a socialist or you're a capitalist, and I said, look, to me, that is immaterial. There is a bit of good in each of the system. There is a bit of good in each of the system. And you can borrow from that particular system and make it work for Nigeria. And we're trying to formulate our own Nigerian system of how to run things and how to run a more efficient government. So that was how I brought people in. So you had all people of all shades of opinion, all ideologies, all religion, but all of us must love that country, must be committed to that country, and we will think and work for the good of the country and the well-being of the people.
How did you prevent corruption from taking over?
Now, one of the things that I said is that, well, first of all, I will try not to be corrupt myself. That I try, to live by. And, well, as people used to say that, he's made a lot of money. I said to them, look, if you have any, if you find out where that my money is, please let me know, but just give me only 10% of it, of that particular money. But first of all, you've got to make sure that you yourself are not corrupt. And then you've got to get the members of your government to appreciate that we've got to make sure that none of us is corrupt. We've got to eschew corruption. But of course, I said,
how did you police that?
Well, before answer you,
Okay.
but I said I know that really corruption. It is up to the individual, to make a conscious effort not to be corrupt. And I said we cannot totally eradicate corruption unless if you are able to remove that cancer from that particular individual. If an individual is corrupt because his upbringing, his religion does not control that, then there is nothing that you can do. But let us reduce it to the barest minimum. Now, corruption, the way I dealt with it is that if there is any report about any corruption in any particular individual, as the individual, I said, this is the report I have received about you. Can you give me your response? Meanwhile, I've set either the security or a private investigation to be done as far as that particular aspect of things is concerned. And if I found that he has given me his report, and after the report that I have received, I will then challenge him. I said, but what of this? And if he cannot answer, then I'm afraid if you are a member of my government, you are on your way out. If you are a permanent secretary or a civil servant, then you know that it is the end of your career as a civil servant. Now, invariably, if it's a case that you will leave for the court to deal with, then you let the court deal with it. But if not, I think it is summary dismissal or termination of service, depending on what you're doing. But one thing that I've always said, because there will always be false accusation against people. I've always demanded there must be an honest and sincere report of that corruption, and I do not accept any rumors unless you can prove it, and you can be able to also stand in front of that particular person and say that this is what he's done, and you can prove that he's done it. I will not go by hearsay. Otherwise, there will be a miscarriage of justice. And as far as I'm concerned, that is to me even more serious than just trying to deal with that particular problem, and then you do injustice to an individual. But you've got to prove that there is that corruption, and then if I'm satisfied, then that person certainly, that is the end of that person in that particular job or in that particular position. That was the way we dealt with it. But invariably, everybody was also accepted that, yes, we've got to be to try to be above board. And I think at that time, everybody was afraid of, before then, I think it is the government, or during the civilian regime, they were accused of being 10%ers.
Right.
But this time, of course, I think we're afraid of being even 1%er. And you know that if you do, you will be in serious trouble. It is the end of your career and humiliation.
We're among friends here, and this is all private, and it's not going to be distributed. What lessons did you derive from 9 years of leadership that are lessons that President Obasanjo should have from you about leadership in Nigeria today? And if that's in some ways too sensitive, what would you urge the President of the Congo, who's 32 now, what would you urge him to, how should he benefit from your experience? What are the 5 lessons of your leadership career?
Well, the first and most important thing is, once again, love and commitment to your country. You've got to accept if you happen to be there, you are there on basis of trust. Probably you did not put yourself there. Okay, with my religion, I say probably it was God that made it possible for me to be where I was. Otherwise, as I've said, on that day, that fateful day of January the 15th, all those senior to me who, if they were alive and there was something like that, they would have been the ones probably to have been in a head of state. But all of them, Brigadier Mai Malari, Brigadier General Mai Malari, Kuro Mohammed, Abogo Largema, Yakubu Pam, they were all my seniors, and we respected each other. If they were there, probably I wouldn't have become head of state. So I know that if that I happen to be there, to have been alive and to have gone through it, I know that it is a responsibility, a trust that has been given to me, a trust that I cannot betray. And that trust is to be loyal and to be committed to my country, and to look after the people of Nigeria to the best of my ability. I should not cheat them. I should not be corrupt. I should be honest with them. I should try whatever I can, to give them what they deserve. Good government, and good government means providing them with all the what they basically need to improve their life, health, good health, education for their children. They're able to, to feed, to be able to go about their daily life without molestation, and the government is, in fact, meant to be seen as a body that, the people can look up to, and that they can get, succor from, and to me that is what is required now. What I think all of them need to have is to have that abiding faith and love for their country and the people, and to swear that they will not do anything to cheat the people, to impoverish the people, but to ensure that at least whatever it is the ordinary people in the end that can sort of say, thank God, God, we thank you for this man. Or they can say, thank you to you, and that little thank you. Now, I used to say to members of my government, either at FEC or at the Supreme Council, I said, any law that we are going to make, I want us to make sure that it will have an impact on the ordinary man in the remotest village that probably we will never be able to visit. But let them feel the effect of that good law that we make, that will protect them, that will give them a right to their life, right to their security, and provide for them, so that they can sort of say, yes, Tubarakallah. Well, they say, thank God, God bless, that government and that leadership. Now, that is what today, makes me feel very happy when I visit, on Guinea worm eradication with President Jimmy Carter's outfit in Nigeria, Global 2000. When you go to remote villages, some old people, when they come and they say that it is me, they will come and be holding me to know that it is really me. So I said, yes, it is me, all right. And, to feel, that, and to say thank you, even after leaving office for so many years, I feel, at least, gratified.
All of your successors, nearly all of your successors, also would have said in public, on video, that they believed in their people and so on and so on. Okay, so they would have said the same thing. So the difference, though, I'm trying to ascertain the difference. If you're driven by an inner integrity, and they are not, and we can name some names, what creates the difference in your leadership motivation and style? Where does it come from that just by chance that you were more attuned to the need for governance?
No, it is my inner faith and love and determination to do good, and I'm not doing it just because I want them to say that I'm good, but because I think it is one's duty. I know everybody can claim that, but what one tries to do is to make sure that you do what you say you are going to do for the people. You provide their need for them. Now, during our time, we made development plan immediately after the end of the Civil War, after we've achieved reconciliation, etc. We launched a development plan, which we call the nation's second national development plan, which really saw to the reconstruction, apart from the rehabilitation, but the reconstruction and the economic development of the country. We provided roads, we built ports, airports, etc. And we were able to, most of the infrastructure that you probably find today in Nigeria was done during that particular period. And therefore, then in 75, we had the development, the third national development plan, which would have really laid the foundation of Nigeria's industrial takeoff. The documents are there for anybody to see, and it is the determination. And at the end of that, after we've launched that development plan, in fact, I had called on my Minister for Economic Development and Planning, and I've said to him, Bayo, I want you, Bayo Adedeji, I want you now to start, now that we've launched this development plan, and we've put on machinery to ensure its execution in order to achieve 100% success, even if not more. I want you to start planning for the next development plan, the 1980 to 1985, and I would like you, I would like it to be 100 times bigger than the one we have just launched. Now, so that was the vision. We were looking far ahead. Well, I know that we may not achieve 100%, but at least if we're able to achieve even 10% in the end, we did 10% of that development plan, it would have been something.
Vision. You've just mentioned the word vision, which is a key word in leadership. In addition to the love of the people, which you've talked about, what was your vision for Nigeria as it developed, not when you became head of state, but after you concluded the Civil War? And I want to come back to the Civil War in a moment, but after you ended the Civil War, you had another 5 years to run the country before you were ousted. What was the vision? Because you had then seen Nigeria
yes,
develop.
No, there is no two ways about it. One of the things that I had always wanted to do was to be able to return the country to democratic governance, because I sincerely believe, and it is not something that one wants to say so that you can be thought of as, oh yes, he's good, he's doing the right thing. But I have always believed that looking at the system, I said I was a student of history, looking at all the various systems that there are of governance at the time, democracy, socialism, and all these various systems, dictatorship, democracy, etc. Now, I found that at that time communism, of course, which I think was at that time usually said to be socialism. Now, I had always believed in that it is the system. Democracy is a system that if you are able to allow it to flourish, and it is done correctly, and then when you look at the nations that seem to have really made progress in the world, you will find that it is countries that practice that system of governance called democracy. So that was my vision, but I wanted it to make sure that it is a democracy that can last. Democracy that can be able to sustain the system right through. And so, as a result of that, I believe that the best way of doing it is to make sure that you remove the problem of poverty, and therefore improve the economic status of the country and the people. And as a result of that, I believe very, very strongly that we've got to make our economy grow and grow well and do well. And such that when you get the economy set right and doing well, the momentum of the economy can really get any government that comes in, irrespective of what sort of government it is, whether it is the democracy itself. Well, democracy itself will probably help it to move forward better. Whether it is military or whatever system, they cannot stop the momentum of the economy. It will have its own momentum and can really move things forward. So I believe that is what we need to concentrate on. And so I concentrated really, instead of, for example, I had wanted in 1970, I had promised that I'm going to return the country to civilian rule in 1976. But by the time, by 1970, by 72, 74, we're trying to control I didn't want too much political activities, so that we can concentrate on the economic side of it. But the political group were becoming very impatient. I think they want a return to civilian rule as quickly as possible. And they would not allow things to move orderly. And they started creating the problem and the symptom of the very problem that really brought the military into governance in 1966. It is exactly the same thing that I saw. And I sort of said, no, we are not going to, I'm not going to accept that. And I'm going to leave the question of return to civilian rule a bit open. but to concentrate more on on the economy.
What were the politicians doing?
Oh, they started politicking and started creating problem between themselves and making statements, and agitating certain things to be done, and to try to get the military out of the way so that they can take over. But it was the very symptoms of those things that brought the military to take over. That was what I saw, and I decided that I think something had to be done about that, and that was why I made my statement in 1974. That I do not think that the return to civilian rule in 1976 is feasible. I think we would like to concentrate more on the economy first, so that at least when the economy is well and people have money of their own, they have their business of their own, things are going well economically. You don't need for somebody to bribe you with money to vote for him, and and I thought that will probably bring in a much neater and politics than the politics. If you are impoverished, the politician can come and bribe you with money. That is what has been happening in our elections, in the length and breadth of of Africa, and so this was.
You've just been talking about the political rivals, and one immediate question is, you survived in office in a desperate place, Nigeria, with people anxious for preferment and power. How did you manage to survive so easily for nine years?
Well, I think people will tell you that I think I survived the 9 years because the first 4 years is a crisis period, and really at that time there was whether anyone likes it or not, one was you have to be in charge, and people have to concede that okay, there is crisis, and therefore you can get away with even a bit of military dictatorship at that time in order to keep the country together. We had to fight a the crisis after the killings of the people that led on to the civil war, then the civil war itself until it ended. But after that, of course, when there is peace and there is reasonable law and order, and people feel free enough to be able to express their point of view, of course, there was a great agitation for political independence, and for the politicians to return to play their role. Now, I must admit that is, on retrospect, I think that is what I will say. Probably, I should have probably done a little bit of to give a bit of a carrot as well, the stick and a carrot, to allow certain amount of politics, while at the same time driving hard the economic emancipation that I was envisaging, that I want, which I believe, in fact, if you do it, when you introduce democracy in the end, it will be based on not on poverty, or want, but because people at that time said, well, we want, if you come, if we choose you as our political players, this is what we want to achieve. This is what we want, a life better than your predecessor had given to us. Now, so from that point of view, yes, I think on retrospect, I believe that that is an area which probably I should have allowed a bit of more, more politics. But I think, I suppose I was just, too militant in the sense that it is, I want, in fact, just the economic side of it, put right first before, in fact, we start, we go into politics.
We won't have time enough to do a full review, but could the war, the Civil War of 67-70 have been avoided? Could your leadership, in retrospect, have prevented the war from breaking out?
Well, I don't know. The Civil War broke up as a result of certain political disagreement within the country, especially between one group of Nigerians and the other, between the South and and the North. Well, when you say South, Southeast. If
the
we had
war was about oil.
No. Oil is not part of it at all.
Well, the Igbo wanted more control.
No. I think what really started it was the problem, the coup of 1966. Apart from the basic, problem of the fear of domination by one part of the country, on the other. The South feared the Northern domination politically. The North feared the domination of the South educationally, commercially, etc. And I think it is the fear of the major fear of political domination was really what brought about the coup of 1966. Which seemed to be one-sided, and it's mainly the northern leadership, both in the political as well as military, that were eliminated, and that engendered the crisis. Now, it was because Ojukwu or the East felt that after what happened in January and July, and a lot of the killings in August, September, October, and subsequently, that the Igbos had to run to their own particular area, and I know that I had to even make sure that the soldiers separated, for a while. Otherwise, you never know what will happen. The animosity if they are within the same barrack. So I had to allow them to go back to their domain. Now it was, when Ojukwu, the East, felt that they have no. Because of what has happened, they have no further stake in the country. They decided they wanted to break away from the country. Now, that was really what brought about the Civil War. And of course, I said, as a soldier, I'm supposed to defend my nation. And now, as a head of state, I cannot allow the nation to break up. Like Winston Churchill said that he was not made prime minister to preside over the dissolution of the empire when India was wanted to become independent. So that was the point, and I decided that we should not, I should not allow Nigeria to break away. We will not allow any part to secede. Now, of course, Ojukwu wanted, if he succeeded, yes. With the oil, the major oil is in his own part of the country at that time, is in the eastern part of the country. Yes, in fact, he would be independent, he would be financially robust, and then who knows, he might probably go even beyond that to start reconquering the rest of the country so that he can be the president of the country. So the oil is not it became only important to be able to support, to prop up, the regime that was hoping to have the oil. But as far as I'm concerned, that is not, why we're fighting. We're fighting to keep the nation together, and and then to make Nigeria even greater.
Was there anything you could have done to prevent
the war? Well, no.
First of all, the breaking away.
Well, yes, we offered every opportunity to dialogue and let us meet together as colleagues, as soldiers, as comrades, to resolve this in the interest of the country. We made all sort of concessions. It is the question. It is when, that was rebuffed. I refuse, to be punitive, and even when I started, made some blockade and stopped certain things being sent to the eastern part, but as a result of intervention, both externally, from either Britain or internally, efforts are being made that, if we remove some of those restrictions, etc., things would be all right. I readily, did that. And in the end, I was prepared to allow everything, even, not confederation as such. I virtually accepted when we went and met in Aburi, in Ghana. I accepted, that, as far as I'm concerned, yes, we can decide everything together. The only thing that I'm not going to accept is if I'm in any part of the country to say they're going to break away from the rest of the country. Now, it was when that was turned down, that, and then they declared, the East declared UDI. That was when I decided that, well, look, there's only one way of doing this, is to start by enforcing police action, not military action, police action. And failing that, that was when, when he invaded and took over part of Nigeria, the Midwestern Nigeria, overnight, within 24 hours, and then making an effort to come to Lagos to unseat me. That was when I gave orders for full military action, to check his advance, and then to push him back to his enclave, and then in the end, of course, ensure that he is defeated, totally defeated. That was it. Now, yes, it could have been avoided, because all that I have said is that accept to be part and parcel of the country, and every other thing can be discussed. We have agreed, for example, to any appointment, any decision, it has to be by concurrence. Now, which meant at any time he can probably say no to what we want to do, because it does not suit him, and therefore probably you would have had a great difficulty in getting things done and achieving the sort of good governance that you want. It was when that failed, when when they failed to accept the accommodation that we were able to, that we were prepared to offer, that in the end we had to do something to keep Nigeria together, because certainly, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not prepared to to preside over the dissolution of Nigeria. That was Nigeria was entrusted to me as one nation, and I certainly will not allow it to be broken up by allowing one part of it to break up. And that was why, in the end, the only way to do it is, how do we remove that area of political domination that they feared, the fear of the North as a big monolithic part of or chunk of the country. As it is, it will always have the majority in Parliament if it is left as it is. So we decided to find the best solution, and in the end came to the decision that we must break the country into more states instead of the 4 regions, which each of them would have been big enough to form a country of its own. And so if we're able to do that, then you remove the fear of that political domination, and you have a number of states equal in every respect, and they will be part and parcel of a federation of number of states in Nigeria, and developing at their own pace, and the federal government helping, to ensure that that development is done in such a way that it is the whole country that will move forward into the sort of development and progress that that we wanted.
Let me ask you a quick word about reconciliation after the war. What were your principles?
Well, right from the beginning, it was not a war, as far as I'm concerned, it was not a war against the Igbos as such. It is only a war to keep the country together, to return them back to the fold. And for that reason, I refuse to to refer to them as enemy. You will find that there is no record anywhere where I ever referred to them as enemy. Yes, refer to them as rebels. I think there are words like that in the American Civil War, isn't it? I think Lincoln, that's what he called.
They were referred to as enemies. Yeah.
Oh, enemies, but I think they but rebels as well.
Rebels always.
But honestly, I only call them rebels, but not enemy, because if you call them enemy, you would destroy an enemy, and you would try to destroy enemy totally. And for that reason, I did not, call them enemy. And right from the beginning, we started with a code of conduct, how our soldiers should behave towards the people in the East. And we kept our words that once they come back to the fold, all will be well. And so when the capitulation came, I accepted it very, very quickly, and made a statement that there is no victor, no vanquished, but victory for good sense, common sense, and love, of your country and your brothers and sisters, and therefore we must do whatever we can, to heal the wounds of the war and move forward. And in that regard, I thank God for the loyalty of the troops, because as soon as that was over, I received the information that they are prepared to hand down or to give up their arms. As far I sent a message to the soldiers, to all my armed forces. A moment ago, you were fighting them as rebels. I would like you now to become soldiers of peace, and ensure that we keep our word and promise that we are not fighting fighting them as a people, but but fighting to make sure that they return to the fold. And now that this is the case, help to achieve this, and this is what the soldiers did. They they hung up their rifle, they emptied their weapon, and hung their rifle, gave their transport to take the old people, the sick, the women, etc. to their destination. They shared their ration, the medicament, etc., and that was what happened.
This was a very vicious civil war, however. And,
It was.
and very, very bitter. So it must have taken unusual skill to provide for reconciliation.
Well, true enough, but I think there was the willingness and the spirit from both sides. We were determined, to fulfill our word of honor that we are not fighting them as enemies, and and that's what it is. We will help them to recover as quickly as possible. They also, from the other side, they probably had enough of the war, and they wanted to give to give me the trust. And they said, okay, let us trust him and see whether he can fulfill his words. And we did. And within, from that January to October, they were able to have sufficient rehabilitation carried through in the war-affected areas, such that they are able to feel confident enough to return to the fold and to participate in that second national development plan as equal state and people as any other state of the Federation. And for that, honestly, we thank God for that, and that we're able to achieve that. And I said, I was lucky. Unlike Abraham Lincoln, he did not survive to see through his program of reconciliation and probably the reconstruction that he would have been able to undertake. I was lucky enough to have survived and to have seen and to have presided over that reconciliation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction.
Let's end with this question. There are differences in military rule and political rule. You were able to rule by fiat and decree some of the time. How, as you reflect back on that period, what are the things you might tell politicians in terms of the way they exercise their franchise to avoid the military getting involved again in Nigeria?
Well, to me, it is simple. Now, by nature, I'm a Democrat. I may have been a soldier, but even in my military rule, I allow discussion and thorough, thorough argument on any particular issue before a decision is taken. And I try not to exercise that, if I'm a dictatorial right that probably one had as a military ruler. And I know when we used to meet as at the CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, I remembered with Prime Minister Wilson and Heath, etc. I used to say, I believe, I know that we are a military government, and but I believe that some of us are more democratic even than a normal democratic government of among the countries that were at the meeting, and it is true. It is because of that. Now, my advice to leaders, any leader, so that it does not attract the military to come back, is to make sure that there is absolute and genuine and sincere commitment to their country, their nation, and people, and that that yes, they allow in a democracy. Let us thank God that most of military government is now virtually finished within Africa today. Let us thank God for that, and let us hope that it does not come back. We don't do the Pakistan system, but I hope that they will ensure that they do things that will not make the military young Turks because if I mean it is when they see things going wrong or they think things are going wrong that and that the only way to change it is by them coming in and putting it right. Now, if they are doing the right thing and the military do not see any reason why they should come in, then there will be no problem. But let the military themselves remember this. They are not there to be involved in politics. They are there to serve the nation and to serve, if I mean, the wishes of elected political leadership. So to me, if I mean, that would be the lesson should also go to the military, just as if the civilians should do the right thing so that it does not give the military any excuse to come back. The military should have no reason whatsoever, to say that they want to get involved in governance. Now, to me, that is the advice.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
you.
We've kept you